I'm life and confidence coach Dianna Leeder, and this is my podcast, the Crave More Life Roadshow. It's here we talk about emotional hits and lovingly kicking our own asses to get through them. Just so you know, it always comes down to being your beautiful, sassy self, living and loving from you, no matter what. So join me to hear about the healing journeys of other women, and you just might become a DIY ass kicker too. Hey, DIY ass kickers. I'm here today with my guest, Dr. Erika Putnam. Dr. Erika Putnam is a holistic chiropractor at her practice called The Bend in Whitefish, Montana. She has over 25 years of experience in chiropractic and holds a 500-hour yoga instructor certification, specializing in comprehensive wellness and rehabilitation. Erika is a contributing author in 2 books, first being The Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing Techniques, Volume 1, calling her chapter Self-Spinal Mobilization, Mobilization for Pain Relief and Strong Posture. And Erika more recently wrote a chapter in our book, Find Your Voice, Save Your Life, that she called How Moments of Connection Heal. Erika is currently writing books about yoga for students and teachers and another geared towards patients. They are both about how to help not hurt yourself in yoga as a practice and an attitude. She's also writing a personal memoir. Erika is familiar with what it takes to choose change and start over. After 20 years of practice, she sold everything and moved to her dream location and is rebuilding her life and her business. Erika will tell you that chasing your dreams is worth it. You can find Erika at thebend@whitefish.com, on Instagram at thebendchiropractic, and on Facebook at The Bend Chiropractic. All links will be available in our show notes. Hi, everybody. I'm Dianna Leeder, host of the Crave More Life Roadshow podcast, and I'm a confidence coach and intuitive life hack who helps women find their voices. I'm also the lead author of Find Your Voice, Save Your Life. Just a little message to the Facebook Live watchers today. We would love for you to leave comments or questions in the section below the video, but just keep in mind that because we like to chat on this podcast and not watch other things, not be distracted by other things, we're going to focus on the conversation today. So we won't be answering any questions while we're live. We'll check them when we're done, okay? So it doesn't mean that you need to not put your stuff in there. We'd love for you to do that so we can have a chat with you too. So this amazing woman with me today is Erika Putnam, and I'm so excited to have her with me on the Roadshow. I was thrilled when Erika agreed to write the chapter in Find Your Voice, Save Your Life. Not only is she an exceptional writer, but she has a unique perspective on healing as a seasoned chiropractor, and also as a woman who had the guts to pick up her stuff and move herself and her practice to her dream location in Whitefish, Montana, to start again. What a place to start again. Her chapter in our book, How Moments of Connection Heal, is Erika's personal experience with losing and finding her voice. So welcome, my friend and co-author, Erika.
Thanks, Dianna. It's nice to be here.
Nice to have you. Yeah. So let's just jump into the meat of things. You have a couple of things that I really want to learn some more about, and one is first of all, that trip that you made, that, picking everything up and moving. What precipitated that? What was the, excuse the expression, what was the shit kicking behind that made you just change everything up?
That's probably a pretty good description right there. I have been in practice over 20 years, and I started practice in California, then Colorado, and then went back to Idaho. And I was practicing in the town I grew up in. And I was there, 20 years. My son finally graduated from college. And I knew that if I didn't make a change, that I never would. And so I had been coming to Whitefish for maybe 8 years prior to that to write. I would come for a weekend, and then I would come for 3 days, and then pretty soon I'd come for a week, and then I never wanted to go home. And so one day I decided to sell my practice. I put it on the market. 5 days later, I had a buyer. So I knew it was sort of meant to be. And it took us about 9 months to actually make the deal. And my plan was to take a year off and do, I don't know. And it ended up, I took 2 years off. I went to Bulgaria, I went to Italy, and I went on a really big sheep hunt for 16 days in Alaska. And I couldn't decide where to practice. And I would go here and change my mind, go there and change my mind. Even though I sort of wanted to come here, it was a long ways from my son. It was a long ways from my aging parents. So I had to do a lot of soul searching to figure out really. And I came here to look at a piece of property, and they said, well, you're second on the list. And so I was like, darn. And then they called me and said, we already promised someone else. So I got on Craigslist and I found a house up in the mountains. And I went there and I stood there with my arms crossed in the kitchen for about an hour. The guy was so patient with me. And I said, how far is this up a dirt road? He said, 3 miles. I said, I'll take it. I've always wanted to live 3 miles up a dirt road. So it was just sort of one thing falling in place after another, and listening and trusting. And so 2 years later, I moved and started completely over, not a patient, not a friend, nothing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And how long have you been there?
4 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations. That's gutsy. Yeah.
It wasn't at the time. It just felt like something that I needed to do, you know. But it was way harder than I expected. I won't lie.
Yeah, I can well imagine, you know, especially with family behind and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask you something, and please feel absolutely free to not answer this if you're uncomfortable. But what's coming up for me is to ask you, what were you looking for when you did all the traveling and then looking for a new space, and you know, knowing that there must have been something in there that had you understand that what you were looking at in that house and the dirt road and all that, you know, they were connecting with you for some reason.
I guess I'm a seeker. There's no other way to say it. And I follow my spirit, and I've had to really let that develop. And it was stagnant where I was. I wasn't surrounded by the people that lifted me that way. I wasn't surrounded by a job that lifted me that way. The structure of it was really, really tight. It was too many rules and regulations. And not that those aren't good, but they were not just allowing me to be me. I think in those 20 years of practice, I had changed a lot, and I had grown a lot as a human and as a mother. And Whitefish is a really big, expansive place, has really good energy because of Glacier National Park. And I just kept coming back. There is something about this place that gives me space, I think. And I was in a town that was growing around me. And so I just had to find that connection, and I found it here.
Wow. I love that you were going back to write. That's
Yes.
really neat. And that to be in a community that fosters that kind of sense is really just feels very peaceful to me.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of creative energy here, I would say. Yes.
Very nice. Yeah. So you're full-time back in practice, and and I can imagine that you're outdoorsy.
Yep, I live in the woods.
You have to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I probably take a 2 or 3 mile dog hike every day, and it's so fun to see the changing seasons. Right now we're in mud season. So
mud season.
Yeah, it's mud season. Everything's melting. But the seasons are really wonderful.
Yeah. Wow. Very, very cool. Well, yeah. And again, congratulations, because that is a big deal, even if it feels good, because I think we're always looking for what is right for us. But it's difficult for, as you well know, because you went through it, but it's difficult for so many women to take that leap, you know, especially if they're leaving some pieces of them that they really love as well in one place as they search for the rest of themselves.
Yeah, I think that's why the bigger vision matters so much. Like, how do you be your bigger vision? And then maybe that's why I didn't do it so quickly. And what I've really resisted is being who I was. Like, I knew that what I was doing wasn't working, but I didn't know how to do it any different. So I had to be patient with the process, and because it would have been really easy to just recreate that whole system and be that same person. but I have not wanted to do that, which it's a lot of soul searching to figure out, and even like with this book, right? What is your voice? What are you standing for? What is your vision? And that doesn't just come overnight. I mean, maybe it does for some people. It just didn't for me.
Yeah.
I sometimes say, you have to figure out who you're not to figure out who you are.
Yeah.
And that's a trail of hard knocks. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that's very, very true with voice. I don't think that we figure out that, we don't figure out that we need a voice until we understand what has happened to us that has silenced us in some way. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So I just want to ask you something based on what you just said. How did you do anything specific that would have helped you connect with those other pieces of yourself? Like, so you said you didn't want to recreate what you had. So what did you do to create new things, or what were those things that you created to find those other pieces and connect with those?
Boy, there's a lot of answers there in 2 years. I say yes to a lot of invitations, which is sometimes a distraction, right? Like I have to, sometimes I say yes and I go, that was a distraction. And other times it's the best opportunity. So I got invited to go to Bulgaria and do a yoga video with the Udaya group. And then a friend and I took another week and went to Italy. And it was so fun because she just said, okay, we're going to just go on a wing and a prayer. And I would go to a city and I would Google a place to stay, and we would go there. And then next night we'd Google a new place to stay. So we chanced the whole thing, but she trusted me to do it. And we were really good partners on the trip. And so that was just stepping into, adventure, I guess. And we did. So that, is a confidence builder. It's a really fun, follow your intuition kind of a way to roll. So that was really fun. And then, like I said, I took a sheep hunt to Alaska. So that's 16 days back in the bush on a 10-day trip. It was a 10-day trip and it took 16. Wow. And hiking big mountains, being in danger of bears. It just was, like you see what you're made of when you put yourself in those situations. And sometimes it's pretty and sometimes it's not. I mean, day 10, I fell off my horse into my guide's arms bawling because I thought I was going to go home. He said, "Hey sis, you're staying till you get something." And so, man, I had to pull up my pants and leave my dad behind because he was injured and go out. And it was, so those things I think just, they make you dig deep and then you figure it out. So
yeah, all from starting to say yes.
Well, and like even in that situation of the hunt, it was fun. I had a male guide and a female guide, and sometimes the male guide and I didn't get along, right? So I would say to this female, "Okay, your partner's not, could you say this to him?" And then sometimes I'd say like, she doesn't need to say that. I'm going to say that. So figuring out how to stand up for what I wanted with both of those personalities and both of those requests, it was really fun to play with that and to fail too.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the same thing we talked about earlier. You need to be able to see that negative to be able to turn into the positive. Yeah.
So I guess I like edges a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, I might go as far as to say maybe you're ballsy. I don't know. Just me.
So funny because I don't feel like that. I feel sometimes like I'm really shy and I'm really not a big personality. Like I don't have anything to prove. I don't know. I guess I'm just clear at some level.
Yeah. You're just being you. And what's better? Yeah. And I always say that throughout, and specifically around our book, that the whole expression of using your voice, actually speaking is just who we are. It's just a way to show the world who we are, and for us to say, here I am, and this is what's important to me, whether it's the speaking part or whether it's, other pieces of it that we're sharing with the world. So connecting with that, however you saw fit to connect with those pieces and get whatever needs that you had met, I think is awesome. And you chose that sharp line, which is fascinating.
Well, and honestly, I do it through writing. I've been a journaler for a long time. And so I've always said to my family, don't open my journals because the crazy lady lives there. But what I know is that I write and write and write and write. And then at the end, there's some brilliance, there's some clarity, there's something that makes me land on, okay, here's the next step or the next piece. And so the writing is meditation, or it's the direction of finding those answers. So if I wasn't writing, I think I would be spinning in a circle.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, writing is a great way to get whatever is in here out. Yeah, or even in your, in that I always find this for myself. It's that, when there's any kind of tension and you focus on that tension in your body and you start to write about that tension, then it just slowly releases.
That's probably why I teach yoga.
Yeah. So let's bring yoga into this. Yeah, because you're a big time teacher. Yeah.
I like teaching.
I can tell. I was looking at your 500 hours in your bio and thinking that's a lot of hours. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's bring it in. Let's bring that into the conversation. Let's bring yoga in.
Well, this is how I came to yoga. I went to a writing retreat in Mexico where they did yoga. I think everybody else went to the yoga retreat in Mexico where they did writing, but I went for writing with one of my favorite authors. And I took one yoga class, well, a week of yoga, and I came back and signed up to be a yoga teacher, do a training. I just don't like, and I think because I could see where it fit in my practice and it fit in the component of chiropractic that is not just physical, but it's mental, physical, or mental, emotional, spiritual. So, and I loved yoga. It was a really hard time in my life, and it gave me a lot of healing space and a lot of connecting the dots. And so I've tried to bring that to my practice, and it's been really, really hard. That's a little bit what my chapter was about, is speaking into that voice of the doctor voice that runs in my head all of the time versus the how do we connect with our spirits and our physical body without being too woo-woo, wave crystals over you. And not that those things are bad, but in a professional practice, I think you're expected to be a professional medical physician. So it was a really interesting journey of how to marry those two things. And it's probably taken me 8 years, 10 years to feel like, okay, I got this.
Yeah. Wow. So how do you bring that into your practice? Because I think you're right. It's, when I look around me, I'm a lifelong chiropractic patient, and they can give me whatever woohoo they've got going on. I have no problem with that. But that's not true for, a good number of people that I know. They're looking for pain relief, or, relief from discomfort. So yeah, how do you marry the two?
Well, I mean, one, like you're saying, you build trust. You probably trust your doctor if all of those things fly. But when you have a new patient who is in pain, if you get away from what they're really there for, then I think that you're not going to have an opportunity to help them. So yoga is more or less integrated in a more preventative model. Like once you're out of acute pain and you actually want prevention because you understand maybe you've got a certain spinal condition or arthritis or postural strain, whatever, because most people will say to me on the first visit when they can't touch their toes, what exercises do I do, doc? And it's like, that's the worst question right now. This is not the time for that. So I say, great question. We'll get to that in time, right? And then when the time comes, I don't necessarily always show yoga poses, but some yoga poses are exercises. So I just start them where we can. And then in the office, I can do it with them one-on-one. I have a yoga studio here, so I teach introductory classes so that I can speak into the doctor version of yoga. And then I teach just a general class where I'm a kind of alignment heavy, but I don't necessarily pull out the doctor card during class, right? I just let you do your yoga.
So you just said the doctor version of yoga. So what is that?
Well, my favorite teachers are ooey gooey love bugs who do heart opening, and I end up in tears in a puddle at the end of class. I love that because it makes me feel open and connected to my physical body, connected to spirit. It feels lovely, but I don't necessarily it's not that I can't do that. It's just that I also am a doctor. So I can't look at a class and not see some version of alignment, especially if I've seen your x-rays or, I know that you have headaches. So I just have to figure out how to look through both lenses. So it's a challenge for me, because sometimes I really just want people to be ooey gooey on the floor. But I want them to be safe. So that's why I'm writing my other book.
Yeah. Okay. So talk a little bit about that. You've got more than one happening, right?
Yeah. Well, yes. I started writing a book about yoga and how to help and not hurt yourself, right? It's for my patients. But there's a part of me that wants to teach teachers, so that, because I know as a new yoga teacher, I didn't understand yoga, but as yoga students, they often don't understand anatomy or physiology, or why would you be in this pose anyway? So I'm kind of taking those same thoughts and splitting into two different books.
Wow. So is your perspective, bringing the two together, is that a common perspective? I mean, I realize, we talked about the differences in terms of patients coming in and what they're looking for, but is there a market for chiropractors to learn about that, or yoga teachers to learn about?
I think so. I think so. And it's a little bit untraditional. So it pushes maybe potential thinking about traditional yoga. I don't necessarily think I know everything about alignment, but I have seen enough x-rays and done enough patient care that I think what I realize more than anything is there's different yoga for different bodies. And sometimes yoga is taught like just this one way for flexible young people. And I would like yoga to be available for a lot more people, but they can't take a traditional class necessarily and be safe in it. So I recognize that's a different audience. But a lot of people are teaching beginner classes, and it's hard. It's hard on some bodies, even though it's beginner, it maybe not be beginner for them. So.
Well, I know the first time that I went to yoga class, there were poses that I just couldn't do, and so I just honored that, and I did the in between, or whatever was called for. Yeah.
Well, and so along these lines, and I love this topic about voice, is that so you can't do a pose. What's happening in your head? Like, what are you saying to yourself about that? And I think that we need to learn how to speak about our bodies and our own minds with respect and patience and love, so we're not beating ourselves over the head internally because we can't be in a comfortable lunge, right? Back off the lunge. Keep finding that place that feels good in the body and in the mind. That's what I think I'm most passionate about, is that combination of things for my patients or people, or in general, that there's ease in there, that it's not this big nasty minded talk.
Yeah, you're not beating yourself up because there's something that your body just doesn't want to do, or or that you can't do, which was my case. I just physically couldn't get into those poses. But yeah, I mean, it's another place to practice self-acceptance, right? It's okay, whatever it is, and move on.
That's why I think in my chapter, I have a couple writer friends here in Whitefish, and they're in the book too. And
she has some really great writer friends in Whitefish, you guys.
I know. We write every Wednesday nights, and we had a lot of discussion about voice, and I love the topic. But what I really wanted to kind of focus on in my chapter was not so much about standing up against something with my voice, but what is that internal voice, and what does it say, and how do we follow it, and how do we make it more compassionate? So I recognize that probably a lot of people were going to be writing about what they said, and so I kind of wanted to write about what I thought and the words internally.
Yeah, beautiful. And it was an awesome chapter, you guys. You need to get the book and read it. It's really great. And that kind of goes back to our earlier conversation about, voice being not just what we say, it's all of us, So yeah, to be able to recognize that there is an inner voice that is really true to who we are. The outer stuff is something else altogether. Yeah.
Well, and I think sometimes that truth of the inner voice is where the healing opportunities come from.
Yeah.
We get to hear that and find our truth, and then decide, is something in our way, or do we want to pursue another truth?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It just makes me think about the number of co-authors in our book that, even though they had written for some time, had experienced healing when they wrote that story, because they hadn't connected with that part of them that needed to be heard about, those specific experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So I was blown away by that. In my mind, it was, my assumption was that we would be hearing that kind of stuff from women who had not written very much before, but that wasn't the case at all. So I found that really interesting.
I always find it interesting too, where people hold you would say the words, but maybe the emotion in the body, right? Like if you can tap into the physical sensation of either illness or stress or pain or tightness, often that story goes into the place of where the voice wasn't heard or respected. So the connection between the physical body and the words, that you're speaking of or to, I think that's really, really fascinating and fascinating healing opportunity too.
Absolutely. Which is honestly why I want to keep doing these books, give women the chance to do that, to be able to express that. I think that's so accurate in my practice. Women that are coming to me for voice work are usually experiencing some kind of physical ailment as a result of, and sometimes it's very, very obvious. I mean, I'm not a clinician in that way, but it's very, very obvious that, they're swallowing those words, they're swallowing those feelings, they're swallowing those thoughts that, that they need or they want to do something more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else that you can share about your chapter? It was the piece about healing, from other moments. So, you had made reference to that inner voice. So was there anything more that you want to share about that piece? Because I found that really fascinating.
Well, why I wrote that chapter, or what it refers to, is that we all suffer. And that was a sentence that I heard in a women's training one time. And it just, that was 20 years ago, and it still sits with me. We all suffer. And I don't think that suffering has to be so dramatic or traumatic. It can just be time. It can just be spirit. It can be physical body. You're not the right weight. And I think that it lends compassion for us to realize everybody has something. And maybe with our voices, we're jumping to correct or react to something. And if we have compassion for people because they suffer, we might take a second look or hesitate or ask a different question. So there's that component of that saying that to me lends a lot of itself. So that was kind of what stimulated that chapter. And then came the component of, like, Shavasana is the end pose of yoga, right? You lay there and you really don't do anything. And it feels so unnatural to so many people to just be laying there, and what I call like integrating or opening, allowing, right? So I think that is, I always feel like a time where I can sort of lay down something for that component of integration. So with that, that's where it's quiet. I get to really hear my own voice, and not in a voice of do this pose, do that pose, say this thing, but how can I offer them some peace, some ease? And so the chapter is about me actually listening to that internal voice, and then having the courage to speak into it. And it wasn't speaking into it in a doctor way, it's speaking into it in a very human way. So that's kind of what my chapter is about and why I wrote it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, it was a really great chapter. Yeah. Those connections that you refer to are connections within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 Beautiful. 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 Okay, so you have more books that you're writing. You talked about one in particular in some of your direction that you want to go in, but you're writing a memoir.
I am writing a memoir. I've been writing a memoir for maybe 8 years, 9 years,
Wow.
and getting closer.
Are you?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's funny because, like I said earlier, we have distractions, right? So maybe I'm writing my memoir and then going to write about yoga, then I'm going to write a chapter for you or the Ultimate Healing Guide,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit of hard work. I mean, you recognize you're the main character, so you don't want to be a jerk and you don't want to be just an egotistical maniac. So your character has to have highs and lows. Your character has to have whatever you want your character to have. And so it's an interesting process to go through. And why I like it is because I love the threads that go through chapters. And so that my memoir is basically about a sacred object that someone gave me that was very special, and why we keep sacred objects in our life, and what happens to them. Do we keep them? Do we let them go? So it's sort of a journey of a sacred object and a sacred person.
Wow. Well, I look forward to that coming out.
Thanks.
Yeah, it'll be great. So I wanted to ask you if you had any direction, any advice that you could give to women who are either, I mean, because you've touched on so many things today. So there is that connection to self. There is, really having the guts to do what you did and just shift your whole life. Just start again is what you did. You started again. There's so many pieces, and then the doctor patient thing. The doctor yogi thing. So yeah, what do you have to offer in terms of advice for women that are listening that have had emotional hits and they're looking for a place to heal, a way to heal? I know that's a big question.
It is. And, honestly, moving across the country isn't for everyone. I think it's keeping a constant internal question of what do you want? What do you want and what's in the way? What do you want? What's in the way? And not in a way of things let's see, how would I say that? I don't think it has to be huge. It just has to be important to you. I feel like sometimes people, like I call it Tasmanian devil. I get a little Tasmanian devil, like everything's got to go kind of an energy. And that's better over the years. So I think that it's subtle changes. It's just stopping yourself. Let's say, for example, from saying, one of the things I try not to say is I don't care. If I hear myself say I don't care, say I do care. And then ask myself, well, what do you care about?
What do you care about? Yeah.
I care about how I show up. I care about how I feel. I care about how my physical body looks, right? So I think that's a lot of it, is we just have to care about ourselves, and not that the people around us don't matter. I mean, I certainly miss my son and my family, and but I want to feel good. It's kind of about that simple.
It is that simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. What more can you ask for if you're feeling good? Really?
Yeah. And I think feeling good means also healthy, strong, not a selfish feel good, but a feel seated in who you are.
Yeah, I think it's a way to acknowledge that you have needs, wants, and desires, and it's okay to get them met.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Speak into them.
Yeah.
That's sometimes the hard part, is you love people and you have to speak into, because I want this doesn't mean I don't want you, or I don't want that.
Mm-hmm. Or the opposite, because I want this, I need to go find it somewhere else. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so I have one last question for you, and I ask everybody on the show this question. Most people do answer it. Some fumble just a little bit, but I don't think you will. And that is, can you share one funny or fun experience that you've had, or something about you that you don't normally share?
Funny? What are the parameters here?
Funny or fun? funny or fun, something that's gonna, just, it's a little bit of connection to, our own humanity and just our realness.
I thought about this morning, actually,
Did
for
you?
out of the blue, and now I can't think of the answer. Well, yeah, here's something. It's so silly. And there's two ways I'll tell it to you. One, I love flowers. Like, my dream is to own a giant flower farm. That would be the thing that would just rock my socks to no end.
Wow.
But one of the things that I have noticed is I have this way of saying, when I'm in flower farm, like if I'm in a dahlia farm, I'll say, this one's my favorite. This one's my favorite. This one's my favorite. And I feel that way about yoga too. This pose is my favorite. That pose, like, it's so fun to have this feeling of everything being your favorite that you realize favorite's not really true. So that's why I have two dogs, because I had one child and I just loved him so much. I still love him so much. But when I got my dog, I loved her so much. And then I was like, I wonder if I can love two things, like really love them. You can. And it's so I have lots of favorites and I have lots of firsts, and I love flowers.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's fun. I like that. Can you love something when you already love something so much? One thing so much. Yeah.
There's lots of room in there.
There's lots of room in there, isn't there? And what a great lesson for women to learn and to recognize that there is room for everything we want and need in our lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. No saying no.
Say yes.
Awesome. Say yes. Say yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? The last 2 years have been my years of yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Erika. I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your about your story and your life and your practice. And
yeah, thank you for the opportunity to write in your book. It's such a great topic. Such a great topic.
Oh, well, I appreciate, I appreciate you doing that. It was, it turned out pretty fantastic. I'm very proud of it. And I'm very proud of everybody that took part in it. Yeah. Yeah. It's good stuff. Yeah.
Touch a lot of lives.
Yeah. That's the hope, right? Yeah. Cool. Okay. Thanks so much again. And we will see you in other places, I'm sure.
All right.
So listeners, just want to say thank you for showing up today. Really appreciate it again. I know that you're going to get lots of goodness from what Erika has been talking about today. She's a fantastic author. Not that she's practiced on me, but I'm sure that she's a fantastic chiropractor. I can tell by that commitment in her and the passion that she has for both those roles, the yoga and the chiropractic as well, that she's pretty great. So thanks again for popping in, and don't forget that just by showing up today, you are kicking your own ass. You are creating your own awareness, right? You're increasing your own awareness, and that will lead to really good stuff for you. So thanks for showing up. We'll see you later. If you like today's podcast, hit subscribe at the bottom on your way out, and come find me at cravemorelife.com for even more DIY ass kicking.